Imagine coming home after a 12-hour shift, your feet hurt, your back aches. All you want is to kick off your shoes, sit on your couch, and just breathe. Now imagine there's a piece of paper taped to your front door, an official notice, with a reference number and a fine, $250. Not because you broke the law, not because you hurt a single person, not because of anything you actually did wrong. Your mailbox was the wrong shade of beige. That is the world of HOA Karens. And today, I went to the internet, Reddit, Facebook groups, TikTok comments, forums. I posted one simple question. What is the worst thing your HOA Karen ever did to you? And what came back? I was not prepared. We are talking harassment campaigns. We are talking illegal tow trucks. We are talking faked evidence, hidden cameras, restraining orders, and one woman, one fully grown adult woman, who called the police on a 7-year-old girl's lemonade stand. Stay with me. Because every single one of these people fought back. And the endings ... are so satisfying. Welcome back, everyone. If you are new here, I tell stories. True stories. Stories that people share with me from around the internet. And today's theme is one that came up more than anything else I have ever posted about. HOA Karens. Homeowners Association Karens. The neighbors who got just a tiny little bit of power and used every single drop of it to make other people's lives miserable. We have 7 stories today. Each one is real. Each one is wild. And they are all going to make you feel something. Probably a mix of anger, then disbelief, then pure satisfaction. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. Before we get into what happened, I need you to picture David. David is 34 years old. He's a nurse. He works night shifts, 12 hours at a stretch, sometimes longer. When David gets home in the morning, the sun is just coming up and all he wants to do is sleep. He's not a difficult person. He pays his HOA fees on time. He keeps his home clean. He just wants to be left alone. His neighbor Linda had other ideas. Linda was retired, which is fine. Retirement is great. But Linda had apparently decided that her full-time job in retirement, which he isn't my favorite, enforcer of every single HOA rule ever written. And she took that job very, very seriously. It started small. David got a violation notice in his mailbox saying his grass was too tall. Now, he thought maybe he'd just let it go a little longer than usual because of his schedule. He mowed it, done. He figured that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. The next week, another notice. This time, his garden hose had been left coiled on the side of the house rather than stored in the garage. The week after that, and I want you to hear this, the week after that, he received a written violation for his welcome mat. His welcome mat. The one that said home on it. The violation stated that the mat was not, quote, regulation beige. I didn't even know beige had regulations, David told me. I thought beige was just ... needed. I didn't even just. Week after week, David started keeping a folder of them, not because he thought he'd need it, but just because it seemed insane, and he wanted proof it was happening. By month 4, he had 17 violation notices. 17. And then one morning, David has just come off a 12-hour shift. He's exhausted. He pulls into his driveway at 6:15 in the morning, and he notices his motion-activated security camera has gone off. He checks his phone. The footage shows Linda in her pajamas, in his front yard, on her hands and knees, with a ruler. She was measuring my grass, David said, at 6 in the morning, in her pajamas, with a 12-inch ruler. She had a notepad. David waited. He didn't call her out. He didn't post the video anywhere yet. He let her finish, go back inside. And then he got to work. He went through every single violation notice she had ever submitted. He cross-referenced them with the actual HOA bylaws. He found that 3 of her notices cited rules that didn't exist. Two others cited rules that had been repealed 2 years earlier. 1. The welcome mat one was not in the HOA documents at all. She had made it up entirely. He printed everything out, he organized it neatly. He put the security footage on a USB drive, and he went to the next HOA board meeting. David said the room went very quiet when he started presenting. He showed the board each fraudulent notice. He showed them the bylaws. He showed them the footage of Linda in his yard at dawn with a ruler. Linda was sitting right there in the room. David said she went from looking smug to confused to pale, all in about 90 seconds. The board voted that night. Linda was removed from the HOA committee immediately. They also issued a formal apology to David and reimbursed him for one fine he had paid under pressure. Linda moved out of the neighborhood 6 weeks later. David still has the folder. He keeps it on his bookshelf. He calls it his trophy. Sarah was 28 years old when she bought her first home. She had worked for it for 6 years, saving, budgeting, doing everything right. Moving day was one of the best days of her life. She pulled up in her dark blue pickup truck, and she felt like she had finally made it. She had not yet met Karen. Karen, and yes, her actual legal name was Karen, which I think we can all agree is poetic, was the self-declared aesthetic guardian of the street. She believed the neighborhood had a certain look, a certain feel, and a pickup truck, in her opinion, did not fit that feel. Sarah had not even finished unpacking her boxes when the first notice appeared under her windshield wiper. The notice described her truck as, quote, aesthetically disruptive to the visual harmony of the community. It was a truck, Sarah told me. A normal, clean, dark blue truck. I had just washed it. There was not a scratch on it. Sarah ignored the notice, assuming it was some kind of misunderstanding. She was busy moving in. She had furniture to arrange and boxes to unpack. She did not have time for this. 3 days later, she woke up at 7 in the morning, got dressed for work, walked outside, and her truck was gone. It took her a moment to process. She stood in her driveway looking at the empty space where her truck had been. She called the police to report it stolen. The officer checked the records and told her it had been towed. Requested by the HOA, Sarah had to take a day off work. She had to pay $160 to get her truck out of the impound lot. She had to take 2 buses to get there. And the whole time, she was absolutely furious. That evening, she called a lawyer, a real one, and the lawyer said something that made Sarah feel a lot better immediately. What Karen did was illegal. In Sarah's state, you cannot have a vehicle towed from private property, including someone's own driveway, without the property owner's explicit written consent. The HOA had no authority over Sarah's driveway. Karen had essentially orchestrated the theft of Sarah's vehicle. Sarah sued. The case was not complicated. The HOA tried to argue that their bylaws gave them authority over vehicles visible from the street. Sarah's lawyer dismantled that argument in about 10 minutes because, as it turned out, that bylaw only applied to the street, not to private driveways. The court agreed. Sarah was awarded $11,000 in damages, plus her legal fees, plus the cost of the tow and the impound. Karen had to personally write the check. The HOA's insurance didn't cover it because Karen had acted outside of her actual authority. Sarah told me she framed the settlement letter and hung it in her garage, right above where she parks her truck every night. Every morning when I leave for work, she said, I look at it. It makes me smile every single time. For the Martinez family, Christmas was not just a holiday, it was an event. Every year, everything is a family tradition. Their home on December 1st, it was a family tradition. The kids would come home from school, everyone would get out the boxes from the attic. It was never excessive. It was never excessive. We're talking a string of lights along the roofline, another around the front bush, and a small wreath on the door. Warm, classic, simple. The kind of decoration that makes a neighborhood feel like home. And then the new HOA board president moved in across the street. December 1st. The Martinez family puts up their lights. The children are laughing. The hot chocolate is on the stove. It is a perfect evening. The next morning, there is an official violation notice in their mailbox. The notice stated that their display was, quote, excessive in nature and a potential distraction to drivers passing through the neighborhood. It demanded full removal within 48 hours, or they would face a $100 per day fine. I counted the lights, Mr. Martinez told me. There were 212. I counted them because I could not believe anyone would call 200 lights excessive. The Karen across the street, let's call her Diane, was apparently deeply bothered by any sign of joy visible from her living room window. She filed the notice herself, as board president, without consulting any other board members. The Martinez family was upset. They talked about just taking the lights down to avoid the drama. But their eldest daughter, 16 years old, said something that changed everything. She said, "Mom, if we take them down, she wins. And she doesn't deserve to win." So they did something else. Mrs. Martinez posted in the neighborhood Facebook group. She shared the violation notice. She shared photos of their modest, tasteful display. And she asked one simple question: does anyone else think this is unreasonable? Within 6 hours, the post had 240 responses. Within 24 hours, 23 families on the street had put up Christmas decorations. Not modest decorations, not tasteful decorations. One neighbor rented an inflatable Santa that was 8 feet tall. Another installed a projector light system that covered their entire front yard in moving snowflakes. 2 houses down, someone put up a complete nativity scene with spotlights. A man 3 doors from Diane set up a fog machine that ran every evening from 5 to 9 p.m. One family, God bless them, set their decorations to music, synchronized Christmas. Lights that pulse to Mariah Carey every hour on the hour until 10 at night. Diane had to drive through this every single day. She had to look at it from her window every single evening. She filed violation notices against 11 of the 23 families. Every single one was challenged. Not one held up. She did not file a single violation notice for the rest of the year, or the year after that. The Martinez family still decorates every December 1st. Their daughter, now in college, comes home every year for it. They added a fog machine of their own. Lily was 7 years old. She was in 2nd grade. Her class was doing a charity project, raising money for a children's hospital that her school had partnered with. Lily's contribution to the project was a lemonade stand. She made the sign herself with crayons. It said, "Cold lemonade 50 cents," and she had drawn a picture of a sun and a lemon that her mother said was genuinely adorable. She set it up on a folding table in the front yard on a Saturday morning. She had been open for approximately 20 minutes when the HOA Karen appeared. Lily's mom was watching from the porch when she saw the woman from the end of the street, the one who was always at HOA meetings. The one who had a laminated copy of the bylaws in her car, walking purposefully toward Lily's table. She watched the woman stop in front of her 7-year-old daughter, cross her arms and say, and Lily's mom heard every word, "You do not have a vendor's permit. You are in violation of Section 4, subsection B of the HOA Community Guidelines. This stand must be closed immediately." Lily looked up at this woman. She blinked. She said, "But it's for the children's hospital." The woman said, "That is not relevant." Lily's mom came off the porch at that point. She told the woman, politely but firmly, that her daughter was raising money for charity, that this was a residential neighborhood, not a commercial zone, and that no HOA bylaw had any authority over a child's lemonade stand. The woman pulled out her phone and called the police. An actual police officer arrived 12 minutes later. He stepped out of the car, took in the situation, a 7-year-old girl, a crayon sign, a folding table, 2 pitchers of lemonade, and then he walked over took out his wallet, and bought a cup of lemonade for $1. He told Lily she had made excellent lemonade. He told her mom to have a wonderful day. He got back in his car and left. He did not speak to the HOA Karen, not a single word. Someone had filmed the whole interaction from their car. The footage went on TikTok that afternoon. By Sunday evening, it had 4 million views. By Monday, it was on 3 local news stations. By Tuesday, national outlets were picking it up. People from across the country found Lily's school charity page and donated. The original goal had been $500. Lily's lemonade stand raised $4,211. The Children's Hospital sent her a thank you letter with her name on it. Her teacher laminated it and put it on the classroom wall. The HOA Karen issued a formal apology, not to Lily, but to the HOA board, because the publicity had apparently made the board look bad. She never addressed Lily or her family directly. Lily still has her crayon sign. She's kept it. James had lived in his home for 11 years. In his backyard stood an oak tree that had been there for 40. It was massive and beautiful and shaded nearly his entire yard. His kids had grown up climbing it. He'd hung a swing from its lowest branch when they were small. His neighbor, who had moved in 2 years earlier, hated that tree. It dropped leaves into her swimming pool every autumn, and she considered this a personal insult. She had asked James to cut it down 3 times. 3 times? He had politely said no, so she decided to force the issue. She submitted a formal complaint to the HOA board with photographs. The photographs showed what appeared to be significant root damage to the community. Footpath that ran along the edge of James's property. Cracked pavement, raised sections. The kind of damage that looks like a genuine safety hazard. The board took it seriously. They sent James a notice saying the tree would need to be professionally assessed, and that if damage was confirmed, he would be required to have the tree removed at his own expense. James was blindsided. He walked the footpath carefully. He could not find the damage shown in the photos. He walked it again. He had his wife walk it. Nothing matched what was in the pictures. He hired an arborist to do a full assessment. He hired a structural engineer to evaluate the path. Both came back with the same conclusion. The tree's root system was healthy and self-contained. There was no damage to the path. None. But James's son, 23 years old, working as a graphic designer, had been looking at the photographs the neighbor had submitted. And he noticed something. The cracks in the pavement looked wrong. The shadows were slightly off. The texture didn't match the surrounding area. He pulled the image files and checked the metadata. The photos had been edited. The file modification date was 3 days before the complaint was submitted. The cracks had been digitally added. James's son put together a clear, professional, side-by-side comparison. Original file metadata on one side, manipulated image on the other. Current photographs of the actual undamaged path alongside what was submitted to the board. James presented it at the next HOA meeting. He said the room was very still when he finished. The neighbor denied it. She said the photos were real. She said James's son had fabricated the analysis. The board asked to see the original files. She could not produce them because she didn't realize the edited versions still carried the original creation metadata. The board voted to dismiss the complaint entirely. They also removed her from the HOA's Environmental Committee, a position she had used to file the complaint in the first place. They referred the matter to local authorities for submission of fraudulent documentation. James's oak tree is still standing. He put a new swing on it last spring for his grandchildren this time. I want to be honest with you. When Mike first told me this story, I thought it was going to be a quick, funny one. A little palate cleanser before we got to something more serious. It is not a quick, funny one. It is an epic. It is 14 months long, and it ends with a man celebrating an annual holiday he invented himself. Mike bought a garden gnome at a car boot sale. It was about a foot tall, slightly chipped on one ear, and he thought it was charming. He put it by his front door. Within 4 days, he had a violation notice. The Karen across the road, a woman who had apparently appointed herself the visual director of the entire street, had filed a complaint describing the gnome as, quote, a kitschy eyesore incompatible with the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Mike read this notice. He thought about it for a while, and then he went back to the car boot sale and bought 2 more gnomes. She filed another complaint. He bought 3 more. She escalated to the board. He escalated to eBay. By month 3, he had 47 gnomes. But Mike wasn't just accumulating gnomes randomly. He was building something. There was a gnome parliament, a gnome courthouse with a tiny gavel, a gnome marketplace with little stalls, a gnome school with children-sized gnomes seated in rows, and at the center, 2 gnomes facing each other across a tiny fence. One was labeled Mike, one was labeled simply Karen. Neighbors started coming by to look. Kids loved it. Someone wrote about it in the local community newsletter, favorably. A local journalist came and took photographs. The gnome civilization became something of a local attraction. The HOA tried to fine Mike. He challenged every single fine. And here is where it gets really good. Mike had done his research, or more accurately, Mike's sister, who was a paralegal, had done his research. In his city, decorative yard art is protected under a local ordinance as an expression of personal property rights, provided it does not constitute a safety hazard or obstruct public walkways. 47 gnomes, however eccentric, did not constitute a safety hazard. Every fine was dismissed. The HOA board, embarrassed by the coverage and the failed fines, quietly dropped the matter. Mike did not drop the matter. He adds 1 new gnome every year on the anniversary of the first complaint. He calls this day Gnomeversary. He has a small party. The neighbors come. There are gnome-themed cupcakes. He is currently at 61 gnomes. This last story is different. I want to be clear about that before we start. There's no fun revenge. There are no gnomes. There's no viral video or Christmas light show. This is the story of what happens when a person uses power carelessly for too long and then runs into someone who is completely unafraid of accountability. Patricia had been the HOA board president for 6 years. In that time, she had issued over 300 violation notices. 2 families had sold their homes and moved, partly because of the stress of dealing with her. Neighbors described her as relentless, petty, and completely convinced that the rules existed specifically to give her authority over other people's lives. She had never faced any real pushback until Mr. Chun moved in. Mr. Chun was 67 years old. He was quiet. He was polite. He kept his garden immaculate. He attended every HOA meeting and sat in the back row and said very little. After 3 months of attending, Patricia made her mistake. She sent him a violation notice for having his recycling bins visible from the street on a collection day. The bins were out for 4 hours on a Tuesday morning, as they were every week, because Tuesday was collection day. Mr. Chun sent a polite response asking which bylaw she was citing. Patricia cited a rule that existed. Mr. Chun checked the rule. The rule said bins should be stored out of sight within 24 hours of collection. His bins were in by noon. He was not in violation. He sent a second polite letter pointing this out. Patricia did not respond. Mr. Chun began to pay very close attention. He attended every meeting. He requested copies of every financial record the HOA was required by law to provide to members. He read every document. He cross-referenced every expense against every receipt. He had been a corporate attorney for 38 years before he retired, and he read financial documents the way other people read the news, quickly, thoroughly, and with an eye for what doesn't belong. It took him 4 months to build his case, but when he had it, it was airtight. Patricia had been using the HOA's shared accounts to pay for personal expenses. Not enormous amounts, but consistent over years. Dinners, a gym membership, a parking fine, some home supply purchases, individually small. Collectively, over the period Mr. Chun documented, more than $8,000. Mr. Chun did not confront Patricia privately. He did not send threatening letters. He did not post anything online. At the next HOA meeting during the financial report section, he asked to speak. He stood up, adjusted his reading glasses, and presented his findings, calmly, clearly, with printed documentation, organized into a numbered binder that he had prepared copies of for every board member. Patricia tried to interrupt. Mr. Chun waited for her to finish each time and then continued. The meeting ran for 3 hours. By the end of it, 2 board members had called for Patricia's immediate removal. A third had already started researching the HOA's legal obligations regarding financial misconduct. Patricia was removed from the board that night. She was required to repay the $8,000. The HOA filed a civil suit. She was asked, quietly but firmly, to consider whether she wanted to remain a member of the community. She sold her home 6 months later. Mr. Chun was elected board president at the next meeting. His first act was to lower the monthly HOA fees by 15%. His second was to propose a community garden in the common area. It was approved unanimously. He has since revised the bylaws to include clearer financial oversight requirements, a formal appeals process for violation notices, and a rule that no member can serve as board president for more than 3 consecutive years. He is, by all accounts, the best HOA president the community has ever had. 7 stories, 7 HOA Karens. 7 people who were told to be quiet and sit down and decided, very reasonably, absolutely not. And here's what all of them had in common. Not one of them screamed. Not one of them keyed a car or left a nasty note or did something they'd regret. They all did the same thing. They learned the rules, they documented everything, and they waited for the moment to use it. David kept a folder. Sarah called a lawyer. The Martinez family built a coalition. Lily's story went viral because someone pressed record. James's son checked the metadata. Mike read the ordinance. And Mr. Chun just waited 4 months and built a binder. That's the move, by the way. That's always the move. Document, be patient, know your rights. If you have an HOA Karen story, I want it. Drop it in the comments. The best one, the wildest one, the one that still makes you shake your head. That one gets featured in part 2. And based on what you've already been sending me, part 2 is going to be something else. If this video made you feel even slightly better about your own neighbors, give it a like. It genuinely helps. And subscribe if you want to be here for part 2. Because I am not done with HOA Karen stories, not even close. Also, stay on good terms with your neighbors. Unless your neighbor has a ruler and pajamas. In that case, get a security camera.